evening, everyone. Good evening and welcome back. Welcome back to another PorscheCooled podcast. Today we are joined again by Steve, all the way from Australia. Hi, Steve.
Morning. Morning.
So we're doing this by Zoom again. It seems to be okay for the last two episodes we've done. They seem to be reasonable quality, not perfect, but reasonable quality. So if that's the reason why the sound is this way, but I think it's okay. Where are we? So this is a PorscheCooled podcast. You can listen to this podcast on all the major podcast platforms. I guess if you're listening to this, you've already found it. Thanks to everyone for the support so far. The last two episodes that Steve and I have done together have had a really, really good response. You guys seem to be enjoying the content, so that's great. If you haven't followed the podcast or haven't subscribed to the podcast, every little bit helps. So we can keep moving forward. I don't know if that made any sense, but I'll leave that in. Today we're going to talk about, and I guess this follows on from the last podcast that I actually did record today as well. It's the same day, believe it or not. But following on from that podcast, but this is a little bit different because it's making our Porsche or making the Porsche 997 look that little bit better, right, Steve?
Yep.
So basically, we're going to chat about things we've done to our 911s, things that we've done to our 997s, to what Steve has done to his 2008 GT3, and what I've done to my 2006 Carrera 2 base model. So I guess the whole point of this, the fun of Porsche ownership is when you buy a car and it's a used car is, I guess, Steve, making it your own, right? It's about making the car, you get it, you've checked it over, it's in reasonable condition, but when you first buy the car, you look at it and you go, hey, I can do some more things to it.
Yeah, it's pretty popular in car culture to kind of tinker with your car and do stuff in general. Porsches, I guess, there's a bit more, there's a different train of thought. Like there's definitely a market for it. So there's tons of kind of vendors, there's tons of stuff that you can do, but then maybe at the same time there's a differing point of view where purists kind of go, well, you really shouldn't touch it for the sake of originality, and why would you kind of mess with something that comes out of the factory? I don't know.
Yeah, I think
it's such an interesting kind of debate, but at the end of the day, like, it's your car, do whatever you want to do to enjoy it. I think I was just saying to you before you recorded, even with some of the stuff that I do, the thing that I sort of keep in my mind is that if I feel like I can reverse it, then it doesn't feel quite so permanent or whatever. And if you really did want to get out of your car, but let's face it, you're not really ever going to, that you can return it back to kind of standard anyway. And yeah, like, I don't know, if you just sort of do things that you enjoy, it's worth it.
Yeah, and I guess that's how I think most people look at it that way. I think, if you watch, even watching people on YouTube that are modding their 911s, people that we sort of watch, most of the things are reversible. You know what I mean? Even if they put a body kit on, even if they put get a aftermarket wing or something for a 997, you can take that wing off. You have your original lid and you can take it and change it over again. I guess it's not even things like that you can change over. So, and you're right, purists are a bit funny. You want to keep the essence of the 911. You want to keep your car close to how Porsche wanted it to be, I guess. You're just making it a little bit better, but not changing the whole essence of the 911. And I think what you said before as well is important. There's a big community. There's a very enthusiastic community, whether you're in Australia, UK, US, and there's so many resources. There's so many resources online. There's so many, people out there, so many artisans, so many craftsmen, so many people who are doing things for the Porsche as well. If you want like leather interiors, or you want seat inserts, or you want, even parts, you're trying to find special parts for the car. There's always people who are either doing replica parts or, or selling original parts. So there's so many resources out there. There's so many places you can get stuff for your 911. And I think that's what I found and I think I mentioned this to you as well, before I bought the car. It was like, you get into Porsche and like, you just look at these places, and there's just so many things. Like you can just spend so much money because there's just so many parts for a 997. You know what I mean? Like,
don't need to tell
honestly,
me that.
It's the crazy
it's the
thing.
slippery slope that everybody keeps talking about. Yeah.
I mean, you go to DB Carbon and there's just like, so every piece you want in carbon, they have in carbon. You could just spend your life savings on carbon, basically. So we'll get into that anyway, because you didn't spend your life savings, but you spent quite a bit on carbon, right?
Yes, I did. It's a little bit of a kind of, not an obsession, but my car came optioned with the carbon center console and the trim at the front. And it's not like I was a mad carbon freak. I suppose I'd kind of put a little bit of that stuff in the 993. So I had kind of, I had bought some things from DB Carbon in Germany. If you need stuff, go see Daniel, who's amazing. So then when I got that car, I don't know, you just can't help yourself. I think the thing about like some of these kind of little cosmetic type mods as well is that helps to keep your interest up in the car. Like I think I mentioned it in previous podcasts, but once I kind of got to owning 911s, instead of kind of turning the car over every, 2 or 3 years, like I had the 993 for 12 years. And I guess just one way to keep your interest up is to kind of tinker with it, play with the exhaust, or you play with kind of interior bits or whatever. And just doing those little things every couple of years. I don't know, it's just like a hobby, I guess, keeps your interest kind of going in the car.
I think that's a good point, actually, because you're not really you're not changing the car over. Like you said, you had your car for 12 years. So to keep that interest, it's almost like getting a new car, because you add something to it and it's exciting and you get it done, and it sort of relives the enjoyment, like that feeling when you first buy a new car, isn't it? When you first pick up your car.
Yeah. Even that thing, you did it recently, I think, when you got that center console lid. I find, like, I'm a complete klutz when it comes to tools and mechanical type things. I'm not even close to mechanical, but if you kind of even just install the bit yourself, like, the exhaust tailpipes or whatever, you still get that funny little sense of satisfaction from doing something like that. I can't imagine what it's like to kind of do something proper on your car, but I don't know. I find that sort of vaguely satisfying as well. Yeah,
I guess for you and I, we pay for the mechanical side of it. We don't do it ourselves. We don't do that sort of home servicing or rotating the wheels or doing the brake pads like some people do. So I guess that, your hands-on the car is getting these little accessories, these little things over your ownership to just, I don't know, to keep you in touch with the car, I guess. It's just sort of, it's a bonding thing, isn't it, I guess? I know that sounds weird,
I reckon.
It kind of is a bonding thing. You appreciate your car more.
You definitely appreciate your car more.
And I guess the longer you have the car and the more cars you have, the more people you find and the more more resources you have to find the best things for the car. Because there's obviously good places and there's bad places, right? And being in Australia, I think, as we know, and most people probably listening to the podcast don't, but Australia is limited, as in there's not a lot of places. But then in saying that, the Porsche community is pretty strong in Australia. It's not like there's not a strong community, but there are a few people there, like the leather people, for example, that you found, which is in the UK. You've now found a leather person in Australia. So there is someone that you found in Sydney that can do hopefully as good a job as the people in the UK.
And I had a guy, leather guy as well, upholsterer, to use the proper term, who is amazing, Clarence at Exotic Leather. But I guess maybe in these kind of current times, it sounds like maybe the sort of stuff that he's doing is a little bit different. So, for example, I was looking for somebody to potentially emboss into Alcantara, and it was just a little bit too specific for Clarence. So found another guy today or yesterday. So I don't know. But again, there's a little bit of fun in sort of trying to hunt somebody down to kind of mess around with that type of stuff as well.
Yeah, no, it was really weird when you gave me that message today and you gave me the name of that place, and I thought, shit, I know that place because I actually saw it online and I'd been following them on Instagram. But when we're talking about leather parts, I didn't even think about it. You know what I mean? Because I remember seeing someone who had their interior leather of their Carrera Turbo or whatever, that guy in Sydney that had Magnus Walker's Carrera Turbo, he had them redo the interior. So that's where I first saw it, where it came up. And then I think I saw it come up on some other person's site as well, some other vintage Porsche or something that they use that guy as well that you were talking about. Pro Stitch, is it? What is it called?
Yep.
Pro Stitch, yeah.
Yep.
So apparently
John at Pro Stitch.
Yeah, so apparently he's pretty good in Sydney. So that's good that there's someone there. The good news for me today is that Linas, he actually got back to me and has completed my sun visors in leather that I sent him old pair of visors, as you know, in tan plastic or beige plastic. And he's actually completed the visors and he's working on the other parts. So with all these craftsmen, as you know, you have to give them time and they take a long time to get back to you, but hopefully the workmanship will be, I'm sure the workmanship will be great. I mean, it looks great on his Instagram, so I don't think it'll be that bad.
His work looks really good. Like really, really good. And some people probably think, again, kind of going back to the original point, that you're mad for wanting to kind of get sun visors reupholstered in leather, but, you know, whatever, it's cool.
Yeah, but other people, see, we think we're crazy, and then the more people you talk to, and there's another guy in the UK, Nick, that I talked to, which I've mentioned to you, he's going to get his sun visors done, and he actually mentioned to me today, he asked me if mine had been done so he could have a look at them. And he said the same thing, you know, when you touch it, you know, you touch the plastic, you want to touch something that, you know, you pull them down, you want something that feels good. So my whole thing with the leather interior, with doing things for the leather interior, is things that I interact with a lot. I like how they could be leather. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
So I'm not, except the inner door sills, because I'm doing the inner door sills. I don't really interact or touch them, so I don't know where that comes from. But they look good. The inner door sills just look good.
You don't have to justify any of this to me.
Based on yours. But, you know, the other things that I picked, you know, like the console blades that I got from LA Dismantler, you know, you kind of touch them a little bit. You kind of brush past them. The console lid is one of the best mods. As you know, I bought the Porsche OEM one, which was about $700 US. So that wasn't super cheap, but it looks good. What else? And then the other parts I'm getting are what else am I getting? I can't even remember. Inner door sills, sunroof, and sunroof,
backseat doors,
sunroof panel
stops.
Yeah, the backseat stops, because I like having. I'm becoming a bit of a fan of just having the back seats down all the time, and I think with that stop in leather with the stitch actually looks good. You know, I guess you don't touch it, but it looks good. But anyway, that's all being done. So I'm going to get those sent to London now, not to Sydney, to save some money on the freight. So hopefully they'll be in London when I get there at the end of the month. Hopefully I can get them sent and get them by the end of the month. As you know, I probably won't do any other leather parts apart from that. All I'm going to do is, I keep saying to you, I might do the leather console, the whole center console, but I don't know. It depends on the cost. At the moment, I'm not 100% sure. I might leave it for a bit, see what happens. I could always paint it. I could always paint it silver, Arctic silver. But then
I reckon it looks great as well. It's funny because when you rattle all that sort of stuff off, same deal. Somebody might kind of go, "Oh, you're mad," blah blah blah. But your car's going to look pretty good, and in my opinion, at least, improved from where it was at from the factory. Because some of that sort of what do they call it? Pleather, the sort of vinely, fake leathery looking stuff, can look a little bit sort of not quite as special. So having sort of proper Napa leather with the kind of stitch and all that type of thing. Are you getting deviated stitching as well? You are.
Factory stitch, however it looks from factory. So it's just
sort
black.
Of slightly lighter.
Yeah, it's silver. It's like the console blades. It's got that kind of lighter silver type stitch, right?
Yeah.
I told him just to do it as per factory, so he seemed to know what he was talking about. So the same as the pictures on his Instagram that he put up there. And then with the leather inner door sills with the stainless steel sills, I'm going to get from Design 911 as well. So just to make the sills look better.
Don't think I've seen those, but they sound good. I had something like that on the 993, and that looked pretty good. I had I think I had the logo kind of laser etched into stainless, and that looked pretty cool.
Yeah, it just says Carrera on it, but it's going to be silver on silver though. That's the only thing, which I was a little bit hesitant about. But I found a picture online of someone who'd done it on Arctic silver, and I kind of like how it's tone on tone, silver on silver. It actually doesn't look that bad.
I reckon tone on tone's better.
Yeah, tone on tone, silver on silver with the leather in a sill. I think it'll work really well. I think it'll actually look pretty special. So where do we go from here? I guess where do we? Let's go. So the leather, basically, the leather in your car. First, we should tell people where. So to get the best stuff, I mean, there was always the one place where you got a lot of your stuff from, which was
Exclusive Options in the US.
Yeah. So I know. Yep.
That was Frank looked after me, and they're pretty well known on Renlist. So I bought a bunch of stuff. I know you started kind of tinkering with a few things. I bought quite a few things from them. Oh, geez, like 5 years ago when I sort of I've had the car for 6 years, and then I started kind of horsing around with it. They kind of rated pretty highly on Renlist. So, oh, geez, what did I order? I got the inner door sills, the lights which surround above your head, some of the little extension bits in front of the kind of gear knob, sort of between the radio and where your hand kind of goes down there. And there's like all these little bits of horrible kind of plastic trim, all that stuff on a standard 997 that's painted in that volcano grey.
Yeah,
I basically was kind of trying to eliminate some of that stuff. So I bought a few things from Exclusive Options, and then, a couple of orders later, you're up to your neck in.
But I guess with your car was like finalizing it all though, because you had the leather dash, you had the stitched leather dash, you had the door panels at the top stitched. You know what I mean? Mine had just got the door handle stitched, but yours is all leather. So it kind of makes sense though what you do, because it's finishing everything off, right? And even your what is it called? The clock on the dash, the chrono thing.
The sports chrono clock. Yeah,
you got that covered in leather as well, didn't you? Or carbon?
Yep. Sorry, you're right. I did too.
Leather, because that was even though it was a leather dash, that part wasn't leather.
No, it's not. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yes, you did right. I just got the kind of housing changed. It's just it can run away from you, because once you start sort of sitting there looking at all the bits that aren't in leather, then all of a sudden you are on a massive kind of slippery slope. And like, let's be honest, it's not cheap. Once you start kind of adding everything up, it's pretty easy to kind of, get out of hand. But like I said originally, you get enjoyment. I sit in the car. It's one thing for me with the GT3s, so you kind of have this funny little thing in your head where you go, oh, it's a Porsche motorsport car, and for a track car, again, if you take a purist point of view, why the hell are you kind of putting all these sort of non-functioning cosmetic-y type things like leather or extra carbon? Because, the purpose of the car was, it's a track focused thing. But the reality of that is I don't go to the track. I drive on the street. I enjoy the car for a couple of drives a week. So when you sit in the car and it doesn't matter where you're going, you still get such enjoyment out of, making it feel a little bit nicer to look at, all the touch points, like you say. So I think that's when you see used 997 GT3s, when you see the ones with the Club Sport package, and you see they haven't opted for the navigation, they've just got the radio, and you see they've got no leather parts and they have no carbon, they just have the lightweight buckets and they have the Club Sport package, and that's it. I mean, you see quite a few of those come up, don't you? They don't really, people didn't really option them. And it wasn't due to the fact that they couldn't afford it, because at the time the GT3 was still not a cheap car. It's basically they chose not to have it because they didn't want it. They just wanted the pure. And I should say too, it's a super valid point of view. I suppose I just have a kind of slightly differing thing because of the way that I use my car. Not that I'm sort of sitting here trying to justify it, but so you do find it's a little bit funny when you kind of you're in the sort of motorsport realm, because as an example, my car came optioned with the factory roll cage and, the extinguisher and all of that sort of stuff. So it is a little bit, sometimes you kind of go, it's a little bit at odds, sort of tinkering with things like that and seat inserts and stuff like that, when you're kind of harking back to some of the, the older kind of classic kind of Porsches in terms of the aesthetic sort of stuff. But
well, that's
whatever, it's fun.
that's another thing that we've left out. Your car didn't come with leather seats, correct?
No, it came with Perlon. So it came with a sort of fire retardant fabric covers. And admittedly, I didn't really understand that much about it. I mean, I understood that it was sort of fire retardant, and hence that was why the way that it was. But that was actually one of the tiny little flaws in the car. It had little nicks. You may not have seen it just from wear and tear on the left side bolster.
Well, it's like a synthetic fabric, right? So it pulls and it gets little.
Yep.
It's basically a synthetic.
I read something too saying that the bucket seats, the carbon back buckets in a 997 GT3, not the folding ones, the fixed ones.
Yeah.
Which is out of the Carrera GT. In that Perlon is supposedly one of the lightest seats they ever made. Like it's something crazy, like 2 point something kilos. So again, like I've kind of gone and ditched those and had them retrimmed in leather. And Alcantara in the inserts originally.
Which is actually,
I've added weight to the car.
But a car, which 911 comes with the seats with the leather and the Alcantara though? Didn't something come with those? No?
You can get them. You can spec it.
You can spec it.
So it doesn't have to be Perlon. Yeah, you could get leather. You could get full leather, as in the seat sort of bolsters in the back plus the inserts. Then I think you could kind of get the mixture of leather and Alcantara.
But your seats are carbon backed, right? So your seats were carbon backed Perlon.
Carbon backed, yeah, and then sort of like a Perlon kind of cover.
Right. And is that fabric hot? How long? I can't remember how long you had it. Was it very hot to sit in? I can't even remember sitting in it.
I was about to say the one downside to it is that it is a synthetic kind of fabric, and it feels. How do you explain it? It's like wearing polyester all the time.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
It's like you're wearing kind of like an old Adidas tracksuit the whole time. It does get hot.
Not like the Alcantara, which is much nicer to sit on, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And in Australia, like what the summers are like, it gets pretty hot and stinky. So Perlon's not the nicest thing, but it's obviously got its function. So because I had done, you saw my 993, I had the whole kind of interior redone just because I did that because it was tired. And Clarence, who I mentioned before, is an old sort of family friend who my uncle met a long time ago. He just always looked after us and all of our cars and stuff like that. So I got him to kind of retrim the 993, like he did the seats and the dash and everything. You can see it in that old Aventura kind of 993 that's for sale at the moment. His workmanship was amazing, like really good.
I forgot that you had it redone. I forgot about the dash and the seats and everything, how it said it was redone, reupholstered. I think it says it in the ad, actually. They make a mention of it.
Yeah, because he did an amazing job. He used like the best quality Napa leather, et cetera, and for me, like I got a great price on that. So it was a natural thing once I kind of picked up the GT3. It had these Perlon seats and it's like, there's also a nick in it. So I don't think it took me too long to basically take the car to Clarence and get him to work his magic on it. And
so
wound up with the leather covers, and I got him to kind of put Alcantara inserts in it to try to match the rest of the interior. Having said that, like there's always that kind of weird thing because at the time the car was a couple of years old, so very hard to kind of get the leather to actually kind of match. Like 5-year-old car interior leather is sort of slightly different from brand new leather. So you do have to live with that, admittedly. Yeah,
but over time you don't really notice it, right? It sort of blends in more.
Depends how fussy you are, I think.
Really?
You're fussier than I am. I reckon I'm a fairly particular person. Hello to my wife if you're out there. But yeah, I think you just kind of start to sort of learn to live with it. It's fine. Okay,
so if you want to upgrade your 911, 997, and if you want to do leather inside, I mean, obviously some things you need to have a specialist. You need to have it has to be custom done. which gets a little bit expensive, like your seats, for example, like what you did with your 993. That's like custom job. It's not like parts that just make and you just fit in yourself, or you get someone else to fit them in. All the other little bits in a 911, which in a 997, for example, that you can actually just remove with a trim tool or remove by screwing them off or pulling them off or whatever. You can buy those from, like Steve said, Exclusive Option. And Exclusive Option was the main place. Steve found a new place in the UK, which is called Design LS, which is the place that I'm using now. Not because Exclusive Option doesn't do a good job, but because Steve's got all their products. I bought one thing from Exclusive Option, actually. I bought the key surround in leather. I bought that, the stupid thing. But I bought that. I think James and Auto Amateur bought one as well, so I wasn't the only one. But the key surround in leather, which was like about $165 for like a leather key surround, which was a little bit crazy. And now, that's the other thing I ordered. I ordered the light surround in leather, just because, I make so much. That was,
you don't need to justify your existence to me.
That was 50 pounds for the light surround. And like, I remember looking at it last time when I was in the car and thinking, I don't really need that part. And I ordered it anyway. So it's like, I don't know what's wrong with me. I really don't. But anyway, so you've got the other places where you can get parts, like just the standard parts, which is obviously the best two places that we're found at the moment is Exclusive Option, Design LS. And then you've got your specialty people in the UK, like Gary at, what's it called? FX? Classic FX?
Classic FX.
Classic FX, Gary.
He's unreal. Gary's such a nice bloke. He sort of helped me. We'd probably get onto it, but he is one of the main sources for that sort of either the old school or the reissue kind of Pepita, the sort of houndstooth and all those kind of classic fabrics that came out of old Porsches. I sourced kind of fabric because I wound up doing the inserts on my seats, and Gary sort of supplied me with stuff for that. He's a really top bloke because I had a little issue where I ran out of fabric and he was sort of sending me extra bits because we ran out of stuff.
But he's really good because he actually gets the original, like the 911R. Didn't he have 911R, the actual Pepita fabric from the night? He actually has the fabric from the Porsche supplier, right?
From the
So Porsche, despite what people think, they still buy their fabrics from fabric suppliers, I guess. Correct? They get fabrics made up.
Assuming so, yeah.
I'm surprised that they actually, these places are allowed to sell it though. But I guess there's loopholes and everything. But because he had the 911R
hopefully
fabric,
we're not blowing his cover.
Yeah. No, I don't think so.
Sorry,
I think it's on the website and stuff that he has that. I saw it on the website.
I think originally he kind of managed to get his hands on it, but that's what happened to me in terms of I ordered stuff and then it was basically the last of what he had, and he kind of actually said to me that it was pretty hard to kind of get his hands on, blah, blah, blah. I ran into trouble because we had one side done. We realized that we didn't have enough fabric and couldn't get any more. And he basically couldn't get any more. He was trying to get it. But so I was sort of left with one side of the 911R Pepita kind of inserts.
So these are the inserts on the lightweight buckets, which are just Velcro, just in case people don't know what we're talking about. They're the Velcro inserts on the back and on the seat, which you just pull out, right? They just pull out and you can recover them, or you can buy replacements.
Yeah, I think it probably took off with it was like that in the 997 Sport Classic. They harked back to their houndstooth stuff then, and people didn't quite notice it. And then I think it properly took off with the 911R.
And then everyone, it was 991 GT3, right? It was when the touring package came out, and then people started to it was called CXX option or something. I remember reading about it on Renlist, CXX option. And the price for the gingham inserts, the Pepita inserts, was really insane. It was really insane.
Yep.
And I think Porsche at the time, I think what Porsche did is you had to get the deviated stitch. You had to get a stitch detail, and then you could order these CXX inserts in Pepita, but you couldn't get them without it, I think, what I remember.
Yep.
And then I remember reading that they'd stopped it. So then all these people who were doing it aftermarket, obviously a lot of people started coming to them because people would see it in the touring and say, oh, I want that in my new 991.2, GT3. which you saw so many GT3s having that insert, especially in the UK. I remember seeing it on the forums. There were so many images of guys buying those inserts, you know what I mean? And then people were buying them for the Carrera T and, you know, anyone that had lightweight buckets, basically.
God knows like what it costs. The option cost is when you spec it from the factory too, compared to buying it aftermarket.
In my head, I think I could be wrong, but I remember a figure. I remember 8,000 US in some thread, and I don't know what that was. And I think it was one of these weird things, like I said, that Porsche do, where it ties it into another option. Mm-hmm. So to get the inserts, and I think it was somewhere around 8,000 US dollars from memory.
So, for argument's sake, if that's true, and I wouldn't put it past, you know, Porsche for that kind of option to cost that sort of money, that's insane.
Yeah.
Because not wanting to be too flippant or oversimplify, but like that's some foam with,
yeah, I know.
You know, with some admittedly some very nice kind of hard wearing fabric because you kind of bum rubs against it every time you get in and out of the car, but like. You know, some fabric kind of stitched together over some foam, nicely kind of put together. But for $8,000, that's mental.
But this is where we go back to the advantage or the benefit of the Porsche community and the Porsche. You know, all these tradesmen and all these people have all this craft. You know what I mean? Where there's so many people who are doing. You know, not so many people, but there are a group of people who are doing this stuff and they're doing it really, really well. You know what I mean? So you don't really have to always. You don't always have to tick the option boxes from Porsche. You know what I mean? And I think with 997s, 996s, it seems like there was a reasonable amount of options. I know I found a site a while back and it showed me the options that were available on my car, and there was a reasonable amount of options, but not even close to the amount of options they have today. You know what I mean? Like even going back to 2006, 2005, to the options on the 992, which is just getting insane. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I told a story earlier, I think I just mentioned it to you, the fact that if you spec out a Cayman GTS 4.0 and you take every option you can on the configurator, it's almost the price of a 911 Turbo in the US. Like that's just insane. You know what I mean?
Which is crazy, but I suppose there's a reason why Porsche is at that statistic, right? Something about like per car, Porsche is one of the most profitable car makers in the world.
Yeah, no, I read that today.
They sting you on the options, I guess.
Yeah, no, I read that today. It was something like 15,000, 18,500 US dollars per car, which is the highest profit per any car manufacturer. Yeah. So that's pretty good. You know what I mean? When you think about that. Yeah. And maybe that is it because of the options? Maybe it is.
I'd say so. I think that's kind of how they kind of get you. And like, that's not to sort of say that anybody that does that is an idiot, not suggesting that at all. Like I'd kind of go, like if I've got enough money to go out and buy myself a brand new 911, the last thing you're going to want to do is just get like a base one. You want to have fun with it. And the whole thing about what we're talking about in terms of tailoring it and personalizing it, you know, if you've got
do you want to select all those options though? See, I spoke about this earlier. No. I don't think so. I think you pick the things that make the driving experience better. I don't know whether you would go crazy and pick every option. You know what I mean? Like there's some things which are just not necessary, you know?
Okay, so then hypothetically, pretend you wind back the clock however many years, 15 years, and you could order your 997 brand new. What would you have ordered?
I think you would just order it. I think how yours came was pretty much right, except for the Perlon seats, not the Perlon. But lightweight buckets, I still think the leather dash is a good one because it's too hard. It's too expensive and too difficult to do aftermarket. So I think the leather interior is a good one. Manual, carbon, I don't know about carbon.
Yep.
Maybe carbon. Maybe the center console in carbon, maybe.
Yep.
But, you know, more the mechanical side of it, I don't know what the options were. I guess my problem with my car, the one thing which I hate is the lights, how they're not xenons. And I used to have xenons in the Audi, and I find them like they just don't have any illumination at all. I did buy bulbs for them, but I never fitted them. Because I don't know.
Difference.
Yeah, I bought the bulbs and it was the bulb that everyone was talking about. I can't remember the name of it. And I bought 2 of them. I never fitted them. I think I never fitted them because they arrived just after I'd put in the lights in the brake lights. Remember, I changed those to LED. I changed the back lights, and then my lights stopped working, even though these lights were supposed to have the thing that doesn't give error codes, and then my brake lights stopped working. So then I changed the bulbs back around again. So I think that kind of scared me, and I didn't bother fitting in the headlight ones. But I think when I go back to Sydney, I might fit them in, because my headlights they're really terrible. They're really terrible.
Yep.
Okay, so that's the leather stuff. The carbon, you get your stuff from DB Carbon.
So that's Daniel. DB Carbon's a place in Germany. There's another place in the States, MA Carbon, which apparently does really nice stuff as well. I've not bought things from them because I'm a tight ass, basically. And
I call it Mac Carbon. I always thought it was Mac Carbon.
I think it might be MA, but whatever.
But
so I wound up kind of getting quite a few bits. So as we said, my car came spec'd with the console and the sort of the center trim around the kind of cup holders, etc. And then I actually came with the gear knob, the handbrake, the seats, all was in carbon. So I sort of started adding bits and pieces like the door sills, a few other bits. I kind of agree. Like carbon, if you start to kind of go like full carbon fest, it does get a bit sort of tacky kind of thing. Who knows how well or not well carbon is going to be viewed in like, say, 20 years, like whether or not it'll just sort of look a little bit cheap and nasty. But
I don't think the carbon suits my Carrera, right? It's not that I don't like it. I just don't think it suits it that well. I think it suits your GT3. I think the GT3, it makes sense. GT3 RS, it makes sense. I think if I bought, and when I go on the configurator and I play, I think if I bought a new 911 or whatever, I probably wouldn't spec carbon. I mean, if they had a dark aluminium, I might spec dark aluminium. I don't know why at the moment, but I'm kind of really liking the light silver aluminium again in the interior, like the contrast between the silver. And I'm not sure why. It's a bit scary. It's kind of like coming back to that silver sort of look. I like how in the Spider, when you go onto the Boxster Spider, the new one, when you go on the configurator, it literally just shows you the interior trim in body color. And I know that's because they're harking back to that Speedster type history with the colored dials and the colored doors and things like that, I think. But if you go into the what am I talking about? The what's it called? Spider, Boxster Spider. It shows you in the configurator. It actually comes up in the body color. I don't really like that. I don't like how the dash strips and that are in color. I know some people have done it. I've seen some Speedsters in it too, the new Speedster, where people have actually done it in body color. I guess that's another option. But I don't know, carbon, I think it looks good in your car. I think it looks really, really good. I don't think it really suits my car. I thought about it for a bit there, as you know, but I kind of I think I might just leave it.
It'll work, but I think the catch to that is that you don't have to go whole hog, but you probably have to kind of go like more than one piece sort of thing.
Yeah, slippery slope. You need a lot of pieces.
I think the dominating sort of part, like in my opinion at least, is the center console. So the standard sort of vinyl covered thing is probably not if you're going to do something like upgrading that bit would be kind of nice. And then your options are, well, you can either go cover it in leather, get a carbon sort of piece, or paint it in body color. And I reckon any of those three would look pretty good in your car. I'd be kind of happy with that. But
you're right, though. The center console is what lets the 997 down. And the 996 as well. The 996 center console looked terrible as well.
Oh, it's worse. That's worse.
And it wears really badly. Mine's actually quite good because I'm quite careful, and the person before was quite careful, but it still gets scratched. There's a couple of scratches from service and there's a couple of scratches from me, I think, so it's a bit hard to avoid. But it is a pretty awful service. Yeah, you're right. I mean, maybe it is.
Having said that, so my car comes with the carbon thing. I had a little bit of work done when I had the head unit swapped out in the car. And
that's right.
Apparently when you mess around with the kind of like moving, like uninstalling or installing the kind of carbon the console, it's a very delicate thing and easy to crack. And unfortunately my poor audio specialist. He accidentally kind of cracked the part, and I knew that part was brand new because when I took delivery of the car, it was under factory warranty and they actually replaced it, so it was brand new when it came to me. And that center console from factory, I believe the price of it was like about $9,000.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy.
Which is mental. Yeah.
And that's the thing.
Carbon is nice, but not that nice.
Yeah. I saw a post, actually. I think it was either MA Carbon or it was DB Carbon. I can't remember the other day. And it said the most replaced part, and it had a picture of center consoles, and they were damaged. There were all these consoles that were damaged, and it said one of our most requested, most popular parts, and it was actually the carbon center console for a 997. Like they had pictures of it. So, I mean, I guess they're easy to damage, and people drop things on them and they crack as well, right? Like they're not that strong, are they?
Plus, I think in sunlight and everything, it starts to yellow. Exterior carbon is noted for that too. So if you leave it out in the sun, blah, 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 the top coat starts to kind of yellow, things kind of warp and all that as well. So I don't know, I guess if you have your car long enough, you start to kind of notice it. I've got a little bit of exterior carbon on my car now, but I spec'd matte carbon. And see, same thing, even talking about it, I kind of go, oh, why'd you do that? But I sort of spec'd a little bit of the little kind of lip spoiler on the back. I wound up getting the engine vent scoops in kind of matte carbon. On a 997.1, the bonnet, the front bonnet or front lid, the front lid has a little kind of black plastic vent. So I started kind of looking at all the sort of bits of black plastic trim on the car. It's actually not too dissimilar to, what is it, the 991.2?
Right.
Interesting that, you know, like when they kind of released that, it had lots of little bits of black plastic trim on it. You could sort of tell that all the kind of carbon suppliers would have a field day with that, because black plastic is arguably not the nicest kind of material. So it's a bit of a no-brainer to start swapping some of that stuff out. True.
So that's the leather, that's the carbon. I guess the easiest way, we've been talking, I think, for an hour, so we might finish this soon, but
cool.
Making the 997 look that little bit better. I mean, simple ways to do it: leather mods, leather parts, carbon parts, seat inserts if you've got a GT3. That's the interior, basically. We're not really talking about the exterior at the moment. We might do another one with the exterior, because I think we're probably going to go too long if we bring in the exterior. Exterior, we know the wheels and things like that and stripes, but people always ask me about, I know where I get the stripe from. I'm going to buy another stripe, actually. I just thought about that the other day, even though we're not talking exterior. I'm going to contact Chris at Ren Decals, and I'm going to get another stripe. But I might get the same color that I have now as a spare. I know that sounds crazy, but I'm going to get a spare. And then I was thinking just getting a plain black one. But then I thought maybe should I get a plain white one? But then it should be different script, so I'm not sure.
I've got 2 sets of stripes in the garage somewhere.
But there's different sizes, right? I can't even remember this. I mean, someone asked me the other day, and I had to search it out because I couldn't remember what size it was. They asked me what size I bought, and I couldn't even remember. I think mine's 4-inch or 3.5. 4. I think there was 3.5-inch and 4-inch. But if you're wondering what I'm talking about, I know people are listening going, what are you talking about? I'm talking about the decal on the side of the car, on the side of the 911, the side script, which just says Porsche. Steve had gold on his, a gold-coloured one, which matched your gold wheels at the time, right?
Yeah, I sprayed my wheels Weiss gold, the white gold that came out on the RS model. So then I matched it with on white paintwork, gold Porsche lettering with the light grey stripe. That looked pretty cool for a while.
And just a note, Steve did this quite a few years ago before gold became the colour of the moment all of a sudden, or Aram or Aaron or whatever it's called. Gold and bronze.
Weiss gold is different. Yeah,
I know, but it is a bit of a flavour at the moment. People are a bit onto gold wheels, aren't they? They've sort of gone onto the gold wheels. Yeah. Gone back to gold or bright silver wheels again. It seems to be a bit of a trend.
Very subjective. Weiss gold, the white gold, which is sort of more champagne-y coloured, I really, really like. That
it's a great colour.
Thing is a bit, the Aram colour is a little bit full on for my taste, but
Yeah, I saw it on a blue. Someone had got the Genetian Blue 992, and they'd put those bronze Aran wheels on it. There was a picture of it, and it was just, I don't know, to me it just didn't look right. I think it might have even had a red interior, which made it even worse. Red leather interior, Genetian blue with those wheels. Just way too much. I mean, each their own, but to me that's just way too much.
Yeah, absolutely. You do what you want.
All right. What else? Is that it?
Well, the other little bit, I mean, I was just looking at the list of stuff that I've got on my car. I reckon maybe the other two little touch points that can make a difference are seatbelts.
Oh, yeah. Good point.
I think back in the day, like, I think maybe Porsche were one of the first to kind of, do coloured seatbelts. So I think they probably were one of the first that did sort of coloured brake calipers. So, everybody back in the 993 days is like, oh, you've got big reds. How cool are they? It's almost like coloured seatbelts are like the sort of big reds of the interior. So I put red seatbelts in my car. I quite like it.
Yeah, they look good.
They're expensive. They're bloody expensive. But
you got them from what's that site called? Did you buy them from Porsche, or you got them from what's his name?
I got them from Gert Carnewell.
That's right.
Who I bought red seatbelts for the 993 as well. So that's a nice touch. Like, I think there's only very few kind of colours, like I think it's red, yellow, blue and silver, I think, in a 997, but you can find people that will basically re-web your seatbelts. But then I know in Australia, for example, you have to be kind of careful because it is obviously like a safety product. So
that's what I was going to say. The Carnewell seatbelts, and I know I've asked you this before, I can't remember the answer. They're obviously approved by Australia?
Oh, it's a factory part. So it's the whole unit. It's not just...
Oh, it's factory?
Yeah.
Oh, that's why they're so expensive, because they're really, really expensive.
It's a Porsche piece.
They're like 800 euro per front and back, like 1,600 euro or something.
It's the entire reel, like you're bolting the entire part in and out. So, and it's the equivalent of going to a Porsche dealership and sort of replacing it kind of thing.
Okay.
So seatbelts is like one nice way of kind of adding a little bit of colour or difference to your car.
Yeah, true. I think that's a good idea.
And the other one was probably could bang on about it for maybe too long, but steering wheel. I think steering wheel makes a massive difference because it's the thing that you literally hold. Like you jump into like a modern day BMW and they have this thing for sort of quite small wheel, thick rim, which can go a little bit far. I think back in the old days, Porsche were notorious for quite like a thin rimmed steering wheel.
Right.
And same thing if you kind of read what the purists have to say, like there's a reason for it. But even so, I've got an Alcantara RS wheel with a yellow 12 o'clock marker on my car, which I like the look of it. I love the feel of it. Alcantara is really good in your hands, but it does wear. So that's another thing you can play with. And there's a plethora of people out there. Like if you decide not to basically replace your whole wheel, as in the actual wheel itself, you leave the airbag and the airbag cover alone. There's tons of people that can retrim your steering wheel, change the color of the center marker, put a flat bottom on it, add grips to it, all of that type of thing. Again, for my taste, some of that stuff can be a little bit full on when you start kind of getting a bit too fancy with it. I like sort of like the basic factory look, but
yeah, well, as you know, I've got the triangle steering wheel, which, is okay. Multifunction triangle steering wheel. But the round one, obviously, in your car is much better. Unless you can find a second-hand one, like the couple that you found for me, that's the okay way to do it. But to buy it new is just way too expensive because the airbag part is so expensive.
And the catch to that is that you're not supposed to, if you find yourself an airbag overseas, there's all these restrictions with
you
shipping
can't
and
ship it.
thing.
Yeah. Suncoast say they can't ship it. People can't ship it. So you'd have to buy it if you're in Australia or UK, you have to buy it from your local Porsche dealer, which is going to be really expensive. So, I mean, I think the wheel like yours is about $1,300 US new, but then the airbag is about $1,500 US. So Australian prices, they'd be a lot higher than US prices, that's for sure. So,
but look, for what it's worth, I reckon that's a good thing to consider because it's the thing that you kind of interface with every time you jump in the car.
No, there was a guy that sent me his pictures of his wheel that he did, and I think you actually came across him as well. I think he owns a 997 Nod design or Nog design or something, and he sent me a picture of a wheel that he did. I think it was like when you were talking about doing the Cayman wheel on your GT3, right? Or GT4, GT4 wheel.
I came across a wheel online that comes out of a 981 GT4/Spider, and I really like the basic design of the kind of current Porsche steering wheel, but it's a bit at odds with like a 997 generation of car. But I like the fact that it's smaller and a little bit thicker, plus the aesthetics of it. So
but
I had that thought in my head, but I'm not really that sure. So.
Because when I was looking on Suncoast for the round one that you have, the round wheel, there's that wheel, and they had that for $1,300 US, right? But they also had, and I found this on the forums, and Suncoast had it. They also do another sport wheel round, and it's actually thicker. It's actually a thicker,
slightly thicker.
Yep. Yeah, it's like sport. They had a name for it, and it was actually a factory option from new or whatever. But it was even more. It was like 2,000. It was actually more.
Yeah, I think it was actually an RS option.
Yeah, it was 2,000. It's leather. It's not Alcantara. It's a leather wheel, leather steering wheel, round, and it's a thicker dimension, like a chunkier wheel with bigger, the grips where you see the grips on the side of the wheel are much bigger. But it was almost $2,000 US. It was actually more than the RS. It's crazy. I just find that I don't know. I just find it. And then you got to get it installed unless you do it yourself. I guess it's quite easy to do it yourself. But
there's tons of places that'll kind of, like I said, you don't have to buy the factory thing. You can kind of get it reupholstered. Like I've got a spare wheel now, so like going and sending it to an upholsterer to kind of have that redone. It's a pretty kind of easy and cheap exercise. There's all these places in the US, and I think there's a place in Poland as well that have like a sort of swap retrim service, and compared to the $1,300 US that you were talking about, I think you can get it done for a couple $100 basically.
Well, what did Linas quote for it? It wasn't that expensive, was it? Design LS. He didn't quote.
Yeah,
it was a few hundred, wasn't it? Pounds. Yeah, and £100.
Yeah. And
which is
when you look at the workmanship, it looks amazing. Yeah,
it looks factory. It looks like it's factory.
Yep.
All right, I think that's it. The other thing you're doing too, which you haven't mentioned, which is very important, is you're getting rid of your door handles. Steve's taking his door handles off his GT3. He doesn't want door handles. He wants to reduce the weight. I'm
going to jump out the windows, Jigsaw hazard style.
And you've got your RS pools, right?
Yeah, there's a dude on Renlist from years ago that sort of figured out a part. He kind of 3D prints them with the, like the sort of nylon straps that match your seat belts. So they were relatively inexpensive, so I thought I'd kind of have a little tinker with that. And going back to what I think I said at the original thing in this podcast was just horsing around basically. Like if I don't like it, then I'll just switch it back. Like it literally is like a one bolt, and I can do it myself. So. But
you're throwing away money because aren't your door handles carbon?
Yeah. I'm not throwing money away.
So you have a choice. You can either have carbon or you can have the door pools. Yeah, so you've got the choice. All right. Is that it? Are we done?
Yep.
I think we're done.
Think so.
I think it's over an hour. I don't want people to get bored listening to us if it's too long, that's all. Hopefully we're not sounding
talking about stupid stuff. Yeah, all good.
All right. So that's it. That's it for the PorscheCooled podcast. Steve, thank you for coming so early in the morning. It's like Steve gets up very early in the morning. It's like 4 a.m. in Australia, and it's 9:30 in the evening here in Bahrain. So Steve has got up very early for this podcast.
No worries. I can hear my baby crying again, so it's
your baby's crying, so it's a time to go. But that's it for today. Like I said, you can find us on all the major podcast platforms. Thanks for listening, and bye for now.